and welcome to this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us once again.
Thank you, Raul. It's pleasure is all mine. I'm looking forward to this continued conversation.
Thank you. And this is the first conversation for this year among us. The last one that we did was latter part of the 2021. And I'm glad that we are starting the year by going deeper into what we had last touched upon, which was just to refresh. What we talked last about was um, how can anyone develop themselves to be a leader, and in a very structured and clear manner, you were able to distill it in form of 10 keys to successful leadership.
Yes.
So that was very helpful. And what I thought was that in this particular conversation, we could actually pick a few of those keys and go a little bit more into the detail of what is it, why is that particular aspect important, and how can anyone develop a system or habits to develop themselves around that particular key.
Yes, let's go for it. I think it's an interesting subject, and look, there's I'm pointing out these 10 key features. You can certainly add another 10 if you want. So all kinds of uh, things that are important for a leader, but I think these are really fundamental.
Absolutely. So then let's go for it. I'll stick to those 10 for the purpose of this particular conversation because I'm personally very curious about a few of them. There have been areas where I myself realized that I need to do more, but I always felt limited in my interventions on how to actually think about in a practical way and execute better on those. So
Mhm.
without further ado, let me start with the first one, which we had covered in our last session. So one of the keys to successful leadership you had mentioned about was authentic executive presence. You did mention what it is about, but just to refresh our memories, I want to hear from you. How do you define what authentic executive presence is?
Well, I mean, we know, I assume we know what authentic means. Is really being yourself and being ideally your best self as a leader. And why is authentic such a key word or a key adjective in defining a leadership presence? Well, think about it that way. Leaders need to influence, leaders need to engage, no matter what level of leadership you are in. And when you are not authentic in the way you are engaging, you are not able to build trust. And leadership without trust is, in essence, not sustainable, and it's not. You won't be able to engage people for a common goal and for the greater good of the organization and their own targets and goals and aspirations. So that's where authenticity is so utterly important.
Understood. And you touched upon, I think, two key aspects. One is importance of building trust, and in relation to building trust, being authentic. So I think that clarifies why is it important. If I were to think of it further, are there any client situations you have been a part of, or in your own professional journey, where you saw this live, where someone either struggled to reach the next level because of lack of authentic executive presence, or someone significantly benefited by developing a stronger authentic executive presence?
Yeah, well, sure, absolutely. It happens all the time. Uh, it's very important for a leader to create leadership presence. It's the presence when you enter the room. It's the presence when you are in front of people, that without having to say a word of your title or your function, it's people feel you are the one in the room. You're the one that takes care and takes charge. And to create that that environment, authenticity and trust is certainly incredibly important. And if you think about it, without trust, it is hard to build relationship. Leading is very much relationship based, and that can be individually relationships, but also relationships with a group, with a team, with an organization. If you uh, if you can't be trusted, or if you don't exude that trustful vibes, people won't follow you. At least if they have choices, they may not make the choice. And that is so critical in a leadership environment, particularly when you think about now remote and distributed work environments. There it is absolutely crucial. You can't lead effectively unless you have authentic, trustful relationships with people, which is your leadership presence. I had a client. She was a brilliant young lady in her mid to late 30s. Really very, very smart, well educated, very well respected, but her leadership presence was was not effective, and it was fascinating. She, in essence, she suffered from the imposter syndrome. She didn't think she belonged in that leadership position. So she was always a little bit apologetic about everything that she mentioned, that she brought forward, that she requested for or suggested, and that background of uncertainty and insecurity, I call it that way now because that's what we found out. It turned out to be this imposter syndrome. It completely held her back. So what we did is with questions and with conversations to create more of a self-understanding that actually I do belong. I know things, I understand things, and people relate to me, and to create a more certain uh, presence, and being clear and authentic about it when she said something, without having to think, well, should I say this or should I not? Maybe how will people react to it? How will people think about it? You can't change that. You can't really influence that. If you need to be your best self, as I call it. That's what leadership is all about. And then support people. Leaders are effective leaders are the strongest supporters of their team, of their people. And when you do this in an authentic and honest and a way that people can relate to, that's where you create that presence. And I mean,
Thank you, Manfred. I think
there are plenty of reasons why somebody is lacking that leadership presence. Yeah, I just used one, but there are
one.
a
Yeah, I was just about to
multitude
say
of
thank you.
facets.
Yeah,
But that is
but thank you
that
for
is the
sharing that
coaching
example.
work as well, and the relationship with the client to find out what is the root cause.
Hmm.
How does my presence that I exude not come across the way I want it to be seen, or it needs to be seen, and what are then the root causes that this happens? That is a process of uh, exploration and finding yourself and self-awareness to get to those points and then work with those issues and eliminate them and change them and in essence make yourself whole.
And in your experience, what's the starting point of this process? This example that you shared, was it the awareness on her part that I'm not coming across the way I should? And that awareness then led to identifying the root cause, um, being the imposter syndrome? Or in other situations, you have found it to be different? Um, um, in terms of what the starting point is it the awareness on the individual part, like if I have to uh, create that awareness, uh, what would be the typical starting point for me?
Well, you really need to find the starting point and you need to find it together. The thing is, something is not working the way, or that the results are not the way that they are desired. And the individual recognizes that, or the supervisor recognizes that. So that is the starting point. We don't get the results and we don't understand why. Because the person, as I said, a very smart, very well educated, greatly experienced, bright and great lady, and it still didn't really hit kind of on all five cylinders. So
I love it. I think you bring us back every time we have this conversation. You bring it back to that keyword results, and I'm always able to link it to the way you define leadership also in that way, working through people to get results. So in this case as well, it's about results. The starting point
results
is
as a leader
results.
in this case, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So in this case also, it's very important that this is not something which is more of a theoretical construct that one should create executive presence to become a good leader, but it is very practical, and the starting point is about if you are not getting results, then something is missing. It could be the executive presence. So I get that clarity in terms of what the starting point is.
And look, I said this before, leadership is not about the leader, it's all about those being led. And so that is then where the results need to fall into place. And I, from my own learning and my own background, uh, I I had a mentor that helped me better understand that particular issue, that it's not about the leader, it's about those being led. And I have uh, I don't know if I have developed that or if I have thought about it, or if I stole it, I can't remember anymore. But I have this metaphor, as a leader, I am the moon and my team are bright stars in the firmament. I get the light from those stars. So if I make my team members shine brightly, meaning perform extraordinary, uh, help them to become the best they can be, I get enough light to shine because I get from everyone the light. So
What a beautiful metaphor.
I don't need my own light. My light is the reflection of my team's uh, brightness.
Lovely. I love that metaphor. From
And
where
if we
you got it,
start
it's a beautiful
understanding
metaphor.
that as leaders and recognizing that, it will change our whole attitude, and it will change our presence. And if we are then authentic about it and recognize that, we can act differently.
I think this reminds me of the concept of servant leadership. I think it became popular since 1970s, but similar construct. If I were to, create that analogy, that uh, if I think that I'm a servant first to the people that I'm leading, then my purpose is to serve. And if I get that right, if I'm able to first recognize that that is the purpose, then my effectiveness would be many times more than if I take the opposite view that I am leading and people are following.
See, if you have 10 people on your team and they all need to serve you, then that means the output is limited by your own capacity.
Yeah,
At the same time, if you can enhance the 10 people to their best performance, you're creating 10 times.
yeah, which is where if I'm serving them, if that is what my purpose is, then that means that I'm serving to make them reach their potential. And like you said, it would create a 10 times higher output compared to the other way around.
Jan Carlson, I think it was in 1979 or 1980, he he wrote a book as well. But he was the CEO of then almost going under SAS Air, the company, the airline, Scandinavian Airline Systems, SAS. And they were really on the brink when they hired Jan Carlson. And he turned the pyramid upside down. He said, those people that deal with the customers one way or another, agents, aircraft personnel, people that handle baggage, people in the flight cabin serving customers, those are the ones that create those moments of truth. And his book is also called Moments of Truth. So the rest of the organization is supposed to support them, serve them, to be the best they can be, because they create the moments of truth with customers. So he put himself at the bottom. He said, I need to serve my team so that my team can serve the next layer, and then the next, to those that are ultimately serving the customer and interacting with the customer and making them as independent as possible and knowledgeable as possible to make decisions on the spot with customers without having to go 3 layers back and ask for permission and so on. It's very fascinating, and it turned the airline within 3 years. It turned the airline into the most successful business airline at that time in the world. And he was the one that actually invented business class, because he said it is ludicrous that just because you're a business traveler and you have to you can't book 6 weeks ahead, you're paying for a seat $1,000, and adjacent to you at the same row is somebody that paid $150. It doesn't make sense. So he created that business class,
Wow.
which has become very successful in the industry and is successful till today.
And behind that was such a powerful lens to look at the organization, the inverted pyramid, right? And again, a great example in a way that it created results. It's not just a theoretical construct that uh, put the people at who are dealing with the customers at the front. It's not
Mhm.
just a construct. It led to an innovation on the product side and getting business results for not only that organization but for an entire industry.
It's rethinking leadership. It's rethinking the position of leading as not so much as a position, but as a clear function of service.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so much then from that simple key that we started talking about, which is authentic executive presence. So I'm curious, on that note, Manfred, there seems to be multiple reasons why someone is not able to create that presence. You gave one example, which is imposter syndrome. What are some of the other examples which could be hindering an individual from uh, having the authentic executive presence?
Well, not recognizing how you get across, how you interact, for example, how you communicate, not understanding the the simple things that drive people, recognizing that they have what are the aspirations of individuals that you have on your team. There are a multitude of reasons, and that's something that a coaching relationship, this coaching collaboration will find out. That's as a coach, that's one of my tasks, to ask the right questions, to recognize things and to read between the lines and ask the right questions, so to help my coachee to uncover and discover things that they never have thought about, even about themselves. You know, leadership, 50% of effective leadership is self-leadership. I
Mm-hmm.
stated that before, and I'm repetitive with this. I understand that, but you have to learn to lead yourself effectively, and if you do that, you will become also more authentic in the way you get across.
Understood. And one of the ways in which, and probably one of the more powerful ways in which anyone can work on this is having a coach. Um, Through this coach and coachee interaction, it becomes much more simpler for anyone to first create that awareness that what is hindering them in creating the results. And if uh, presence is one of the reasons, and like you said, that leadership is 50% self leadership, then this uh, could be a reason, your presence coming in the way of you being more effective as a leader, and that resulting in not you is in you not being able to achieve the results. So I think if where I'm going with this is that someone witnessing that I'm not able to produce the results that I should have could lead to uh, this awareness first, that there is something which I'm missing, something on my part which I'm missing out as a leader, because leadership is 50% self leadership, which could lead to uh, someone realizing that I need a partner, a coach, for me to create that better awareness that where exactly am I lacking out. And hence, one way, one intervention to think of is to have a coach.
Yeah, and I think it's important to make that disclaimer. I don't want to sound here is the only way you become an effective leader is with a coach. You you don't need a coach. You can become the most effective leader that can be on your own. You can read the right books, and you can find the right input, and all of these things. Um, but what I can guarantee you, if you work with a coach, and you as an individual or anybody out there, if you utilize the service of a coach and seek that collaboration, you will you will enhance the speed and the quality of your development. You can get there yourself, but it will take you, instead of 2 years or 1 year or half a year. It will take you 5, 10, or 15 years, or maybe until the end of your life. So it's that difference that you can make. It's not that you couldn't do it without a coach, but it will significantly increase your speed of progress and your quality of progress.
And I'll add a third element, Manfred. I think I totally agree with you. Firstly, so I think speed, quality of development, and third is I would say the journey itself becomes very stressful because uh, when I work with leaders, when I work with CXOs, they already have a lot on their plate. I
Mm-hmm.
have been myself
Mm-hmm.
in similar situation in the past. There is so much to do that the stress levels are anyway high, and doing another thing on own not only takes longer, not only the quality might not be as good as what I want, but also the journey becomes even more stressful because on top of getting my deliverables out, I have one more thing on my plate. Versus having someone to speak to and interact, having someone whose agenda is nothing but my development makes that journey also much less stressful. So that's the third element I would say, that why someone might benefit from a coach not only in terms of speed and quality, but also the journey will become a bit more pleasant.
I give you a fourth one. It may be more cost effective. And
More
and
cost
what I
effective.
mean by that, I had a conversation. It was sometime. It was 2 years ago, with the president of a company, and he wanted me he was inquiring for me to work with one of his on his team, on his executive team, and he said, well, my rate is quite substantial. And so I challenged him. I said, okay, uh, what type of decisions is she make? That was his report. And he said, well, she's making all kinds of operational decisions for the company, strategic decisions. I said, what's the average value of these decisions? And so he said, well, it can be. Well, she doesn't deal with the small stuff, but it can be 1 million to 20 million. And I said, okay. So what if she makes one more good decision based on the work that we do? Just one more good decision. And it's one of the low price, the $1 million decisions. And
Such a powerful way to
he
think of
looked
it.
at me and he said, I think I get the point.
It's a powerful one, but not an easy one. I think some of the things
No, no.
where the decisions like this, engaging a coach, when people are not able to do a direct correlation, I've found myself also in a similar situation, having these kind of conversations where uh, the you mentioned cost effective. Uh, I would flip it around and say that it's an investment that you make for much higher return. So to me, the ROI is so much high when you look at it. The In this example, it's a $1 million return that you're getting on an investment which is much lesser.
Yeah.
Mm. So
Yeah.
on the topic of executive presence, Manfred, I'll move on further. And the other thought that I was having was, if someone were to get started on it, then, like you said, there are multiple ways to go around it. One is someone would have a coach, but often, including myself, the journey starts by first self discovery, to know a little bit more about where exactly is the problem and what can I do. And I've found books to be a good way, like you also said, that you can read to get started. So I think in that initial journey, I just when you were mentioning, one thing that was coming to my mind is I had sometime back read the book Presence by the Harvard professor Amy Cuddy. And Emmy talks about situations in which presence is presence is important. For example, when you are in an interview, when you are giving a presentation, when you are in front of a board. So these are situations where I think very similar to how you were mentioning about executive presence, that you have to create that trust, whether it's with your interviewer, whether it's with your colleagues, whether it's in the boardroom. First responsibility is that you need to build that trust, and that trust comes through the right presence. And often these situations are also highly stressful, anxious kind of situations where it's not easy for someone or everyone, including I would put myself, to be really really strong in terms of presence or authentic.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
Amy, in that book, I think she distills the difference that it is not only about how you're thinking. It's not something which is so complex that in my head I need to feel that way, but she distills it down to very simple tactics like uh, your body posture, certain the way you stand, the way you take a stance, they all are signals to yourself. So first principle of presence, and I'm just sharing one, is the signal that you are sending to you. Before the signal goes out to others, what is the signal that you are sending to you? And that's how she in that book she distills out uh, simple tactics that anyone can adopt to have a better presence.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I was sharing about this book is my next question to you is that if someone were to think of simple habits or practice, are there some habits or practice that one can think of if someone were to improve executive presence?
Of course, what you are also touching on is what I call leadership communication, which is a key element in how you present yourself, how you're present. Your presence is a result, you know. So it's how you go about this to create this result, and a key element of that, or a foundation of it, is how we interact, how we communicate, and the way we communicate. What she is addressing here as well is when we communicate to the outside world, we automatically also communicate to ourselves, and particularly our body language, which it's very fascinating. If I need to. Is it okay if we are moving a little bit towards communication?
Absolutely. I was about to say that communication and interaction skills, anyway, is the second key. And it's not that the keys are mutually exclusive. It could be that one is linked to the other. So good that you are already touching upon the second
So
one.
so we are floating a little bit here into the
Yeah.
next. So if you think about communication, and communication has three key elements. It's the content, the words that we say and use, no matter in writing or verbally. It's the tone of our voice, which is a key element in the communication, and it's our body language, the way we act, we behave when we communicate. And and those three parameters create 100% of the impact in communication. Now, if I there is some research behind this, and I don't have it all top of my head, but I can provide that if anybody is interested. But there is research behind that, and while the percentages are a percent more or less here, they are depending on who you read. In general, what do you think is the content, the words? What percentage of the total impact does that represent?
5 to 10%.
And
5 to 10%.
very good. Actually, 7%. So you are
7.
perfectly in the range. The tone of voice is the second strongest with 38%. body language is 55%. So that's the whole bandwidth. So now when you think, when we use nowadays, we are very strong in texting and
And just to let you know,
using
it's not that.
emails.
Just to let you know, I was able to answer it because we had covered it in one of the earlier episodes. So it's not that I am a smart one. I just remember we talked about it in one of
Okay.
the last episodes.
So when you consider this for a moment, when we use basically emails or text, we are using only the content. We are using 7% of the bandwidth. And the moment we become verbal and we hear people, we get almost half of the bandwidth available. But the full impact is also when we show up as the whole person, no matter if it's on video but even more impactful when it is in person. So when you take that for a moment, our body language speaks all the time. We don't have to say one single word. The way we walk into the room, the way we sit down, the way we look at or don't look at people, all of it sends signals constantly. The moment we are waking up, our body starts signaling. The way our face looks, the way yeah, whatever we do. And those signals are very strong. And we need to be aware of that our body constantly sends out messages, even if we don't say one single word. So that in itself, when we then reflect back on leadership presence, it's important to recognize how are we moving. If I walk into the room kind of like this, I'm already telling everybody I'm very insecure. I probably have no clue what I'm going to do, and I'm waiting for a beating. Not literally, but so at the same time, if I come into the room with my head high and my shoulders open and with a smile on my face, it's a completely different signal that I'm sending before I have even said one word.
Understood. But it also leads me to two questions I am now curious about. One, Manfred, with the world becoming more and more remote work nature, uh, where does it lead to in terms of providing leadership when a lot of conversation happens over email uh, or probably phone calls? Some of them are video, of course, but I think you would agree with me that the amount of conversation that a leader has to do nowadays, or anyone, when I say leader, I'm saying all executives, would have to do over email, is significantly higher than it was 10 years back or 15 years back. So curiosity question number one is around this, that does it what does it mean to improve effectiveness on the second key, which is communication, when the contribution of content is only 7%?
Okay, so the feedback that I'm giving to this is valid before COVID and before remote work, but it is absolutely crucial now. Okay, so it's nothing new in that sense. But my first challenge that I would make is don't use email.
Okay.
At least make a phone call or have a video call. Technology today is different than it was 10 years or 20 years ago. Today, it is like a phone call to open up a video call. Utilize the medium. utilize it effective. Uh, Focus on shorter meetings with one or maximum two desired outcomes. What do I mean by that? I'll give you an episode out of my learning as a
Uh-huh.
young leader, a young executive. I wasn't really a leader then. I was supposed to be, but looking back, I lacked a lot. And it was interesting. I was called into our headquarters, group headquarters, and I worked there then for several years. And shortly after I was there, I called a meeting on a project that I was working on, and I also invited my boss's boss. And it was very interesting. He responded to my invitation, in essence, very polite. He called me. He said, "Do you have a moment? I'd like to talk with you about this meeting." So I walked over to his office and I said, "Well, what can I do, Ivar?" And he said, "Well, Manfred, I will not come to that meeting. And there is a reason for that, and I will give you the reason. My reason is if a meeting doesn't have a desired outcome at the top, I'm not going to participate because I don't know how I will contribute to it. And but if you can come up with a clear purpose for the meeting, with a clear desired outcome, then I can make a decision if I can contribute to it and how I can contribute to it, and then I will certainly make an effort to participate in the meeting. And of course, he is the loveliest. He was the loveliest person that you can think of, and he was very delicate about it and very nice about it. But it was also a clear message. If you are scheduling a meeting that has just activities on it, that somebody is doing that, somebody else is doing something else, I'm not investing my time in it because it's a meeting without a clear purpose, without the desired outcome. It's purely activity based, and there may be an outcome or may not. So that hit home with me. I really digested that, and I started to do that systematically. And I requested from my people to always, when they schedule a meeting, it has to have a purpose, a desired outcome on top, and not too many, because then it's going to be a long meeting with all kinds of stuff, and it's not good. And this, in our virtual world, is twice as important to do that. So that is a key element to get to create clear communication and create effective meetings, because you don't have that opportunities. You have to create them where you get people together with a purpose. You clear this up, and then after the meeting, you can use your email and confirm we have decided on A, B, and C. This and what else? Three bullets. That's it. So you have your written record. If you do a conversation in writing, in essence, have a negotiation in writing, it is very, very inefficient. That's when you have then those emails that are that have all kinds of stages where people become defensive and say, well, I didn't mean to say X, Y, Z, or da, da, da. Because when we are writing, we are not using the whole spectrum. We are limited to a very small bandwidth. And within this bandwidth, all kinds of miscommunication happens. And I can give you another example for that. Raul, let's assume you and I read the same book. We are both on page 283. Let's make another assumption that you and I are good painters. I'm not. And whatever we read on this page 283, we are going to paint a picture of that. Do you think that your picture will look reasonably similar than mine?
Somewhat.
Well, I'll give you more information. On this page, it describes a forest on the left side, a street along, a village with a church steeple in the back, and on the right side is a meadow with 5 cows on it. Do you think that will be a reasonably similar picture?
Yeah, I see what you mean. I think there would be some similarities, but your choice of colors, my choice of colors could be very different.
Totally.
Yeah. So.
Totally. It may resemble in the sense that there are 5 cows and 3 cars on the street, and that there is some sort of a village. My church steeple may be pointed, yours may be with an onion roof or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
How come? We read exactly the same word, the same comma, the same paragraph. How can that be? Totally identical information. It's because of our frame of reference. Our frame of reference is the basic overall filter how we see and recognize our world. Your frame of reference is completely different than mine. I grew up in Austria, you grew up in Canada, or in, I think in what did you tell me, in Bangalore? Or,
India?
doesn't matter. Yeah. We have a different path through our lives. And so when we get the words in, they are being perceived differently. Now think about, I'm writing you an email, and I have in my mind, when I write this, I write it with a certain picture in my head. And then I hit the send button. So you get that email the next 10th of a second, and you are reading it with creating the picture in your mind that's based on your frame of reference. It's a different picture. And that's where we start then having this talking by each other if it's only in writing. Can you see the problematic in this?
I do.
And recognizing that in the concept of interacting with people and communicating, and now in a remote and distributed work environment, it becomes absolutely crucial. Stay away from emails. Use it for confirmation or to communicate facts and data and figures. But don't use it to talk with people.
Lovely. And I think thanks for that clarification through these two examples. It's not that don't use email at all, but if I were to distill 3 messages that I could figure out in these examples, I think number 1, be very, very outcome driven. If there is a meeting, if there's a conversation, it has to start with what is the outcome that is desired from this interaction. So that's one. Second, to ensure that you are able to uh, understand how to arrive at that outcome as a team, uh, do it live best, or do it in form of a video call, because like we said, uh, content is only 7%. I'll add something based on my experience. Some of the clients, they have taken this cue from Amazon, which has mastered this particular art. Whatever content is required, send it before the meeting, because anything which is written can be received by everyone. Whatever thoughts are there in your mind, that can come before. And like the example that you gave, my interpretation of that content could be different than your interpretation. That is what we are going to then discuss when we are doing a live conversation. That first time uh, receiving your content need not happen during the meeting, it can happen before. So that's the second one, that one being outcome driven, second, to arrive at how to achieve that particular outcome, do the meeting live, or in form of a video call, but don't do it over email. And the third message is, there is a usefulness of email, but it is not to do that first interaction. It is to share data, to share a plan based on what was agreed in the meeting, doing follow-ups for which we need not assemble everyone for very very tactical things. So there is a usefulness. So I think I'll just qualify your message that it's not that don't use email at all, but use email when it is serving a purpose. Email is not a tool for all the purposes. It has its purpose. So use that tool selectively. So I'm putting all these three into what bucket and answering my own question, that when I asked you that use of email has increased significantly, how does it fit into what we know about communication and interaction overall, and into developing leadership? So that's the answer. Thank you so much, Manfred. I'll get to my next question on this particular topic of communication and interaction, which I was curious when you were explaining uh, about how it gets broken down into the three components. And my second curiosity was around, uh, I think these are basics. 7% content, 55% is the visual. These are basics. This would apply for everyone. Is there a difference in which how someone who who is in a role of a leader should be thinking differently about communication and interaction compared to anyone else?
Come again with the question. I'm not sure I understood.
So if when we say that communication and interaction is an important key to effective leadership, is there a difference between how one would think of communication and interaction uh, outside of the construct of leadership?
I Well, yes. The simple answer is yes. The impact will be less problematic. When you are a leader, you typically, when you say something, when you do something, when you make a decision, it's typically, call it a higher value in the sense of monetary or physical value decision than if you are not in a leadership position. Of course, when you are buying your first house, it's a huge decision for you, and it can be very impactful. And so, how you negotiate, how you interact, how you get across uh, with those that you need to deal with, becomes as important. So, at the leader, you are always how shall I say, you are always on stage. I think that is one thing you need to recognize.
Understood. Understood.
People
Can't be
look at
selective.
you.
Yeah.
People look at you no matter what you do. You may not realize it. You may not see it, but they see it in their peripheral vision, and it is recognized. So whatever you do, whatever you say, how you say it, it has a greater impact, and it has uh, it has different consequences. When you're not in a leadership position, what you do may be very little consequential. If you do the same thing as the CEO of a company or as the leader of a large organization, it's a different ballgame.
Got it. And as you were explaining, I think another example was coming to my mind. I think the forget about the title. I think anyone who is in a role in which you have to move others to get results, you are in that leadership role.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I see it, and I think I partly learned from you only. And if anyone is in that role, then communication interaction has a specific importance compared to people who are not in the role. And incidentally, I think most of us are in getting into that role. Earlier it used to be that there were select roles, say CEO of a company, salespeople who were in the role of moving others. But now if we look at over the last few decades, almost all of us have in some way moved to that kind of a role in whatever we are doing. A, because industries have changed, economies have changed, information has become easily accessible. So it means that everyone has got similar kind of data, but what is required is the ability to use that data to move others,
Mm-hmm.
whichever role we are in. Even in our
Yes.
personal life, I think we are playing more and more of a role of moving others, whether it's our sons or daughters, or it's our wife, or it's our parents. So point number one, uh, most of us are getting into that role. Point number two, if we are getting into that role, then importance of communication and interaction has significantly increased compared to when only few of us were in the role of moving others. And point number three is what you said. Hence, constantly our interaction, which could be either in form of content or body language or the tone of the voice, would get monitored. So these are the three I would kind of put in three points around answering my own question, that how is it probably different for someone who is in a leadership role. And by leadership role, I'm not talking about the title but the role itself of moving others.
Yes.
Okay,
And
Manfred, the last part.
by
Yeah,
the way,
sorry.
it's a part of the coaching environment and a coaching relationship to answer your own questions.
So I think with these interactions, I am also learning it a little bit more.
It's triggered in the coaching process
Hmm.
that you uncover questions and then you think it through and answer those questions for yourself.
So I'm curious, Manfred. I think this was also the last part. I wanted to get a little bit more detail around when you are working with any client on these two, and I want to take these two keys. What really happens? How can someone who, let's say, someone like me, let's say I have a specific goal. I want to improve my executive presence, and I want to improve on my communication and interaction skills. And I come to you. What happens after that? Can you please take us through that?
Well, the first thing that we will do is have a conversation because I will have to find out where you think you are and where you feel you want to go. And in this process, we will also find out if we have a good chemistry to work together, because a coaching collaboration is a very close and very personal relationship in many ways. Because a, 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 an effective coaching relationship has to be very authentic, and it has to be a relationship where the coachee and the coach can uh, easily be vulnerable without hesitation. and which requires also authenticity and trust building. So that is the first step, to find out where you are, or where you think you are, your perception, and where you think you want to go. And then we can start working on that. Maybe refining where you want to go into creating absolute clarity on that, and maybe challenging that target or that goal, and then going into deeper into where you might be really, where you might really be, rather than where you think you are. Sometimes it is an accurate assessment, most of the times it is not. And then in that process, we uncover certain things and explore that, and decide what's important and what is not, and how to create a plan going from here to there, and working on the necessary changes, improvements, enhancements. And look, it's not only a part of it, of course, potentially acquiring additional tools and techniques and tactics and whatever might be involved. The second part of that is then also working on how to apply those new tools or those enhanced tools. And the third level then is building the necessary habits to use those tools effectively. Because by the end of the day, it's our behavior that creates our results. And our behavior is 90% habitual. So when we want to change our behavior or adjust our behavior or enhance our behavior to create new results, we need to look at the habits, those that we have, and make and that help us to boost them further and enhance them further. Those that we have and that are not necessarily helping us to change them. And then there are habits that, with new tools or new ways, are habits that we don't have. So we need to initialize them and start building them and strengthening them. Because only what we do habitual, we do well. We do very efficient and effective.
So curious, given that habit building itself is not an easy thing, but one of the most powerful ways to transform. That's my personal belief as well. So, do you have a specific methodology on building habits that your clients benefit from?
Well, there are little tricks that you can help yourself, building little crutches and reminders to create repetition, to create reminders that you promised yourself to do X, and to design for yourself then a construct that reminds you. When you do something repetitive over a reasonable time, it gets to the point where the reminder becomes irrelevant, because you don't really see the reminder anymore, because you're doing. And then you have built a habit, or then you have changed a habit. So it's and there are different ways of reminders. It depends what it is. It can be a simple sign that you do on your notepad that you use, or a sticker that you have in front of you on your screen, where you have a word or a note or a sign or something that reminds you on that particular thing. So every time you glance over it, you're reminded, oh, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do it. And the repetition builds the habit.
Got it. And for anyone who is looking to take the first step on the two keys that we talked about, is there any tool for assessing where someone is on presence and communication interaction skill that you would recommend?
You mean an assessment tool?
Correct. An assessment tool. Yeah.
Well, look, guys, with respect to communication and interaction, a tool that's very popular. It's not only for that, but it has a strong component for how we interact, how we are perceived, and um, how we are perceived by others, and how we receive input and so on. Is DISC, and it's a very standard tool. DIS DISC. That's probably the most simple tool. And Look, I'm not starting with assessments in that sense. I start with questions, but that's just my style. There are coaches that they are very effective and very successful with their clients that start out with a battery of assessments to kind of lay out everything. It really depends on the working style. I use assessments when I see fit along the way. Uh, Others use assessments from the beginning before they even start work. I There is nothing right or wrong either way.
Understood. And I think we have almost come to the end of this particular session. So, my last question to you on these two topics, presence and communication and interaction skills, are there any books that are your favorites or you would recommend?
Oh, I'm thinking what would be. Well, I tell you, leadership. Again, I like leadership and self-deception. It's from the Abinger Institute. It's a good starter to get a little bit of feel for leadership and leadership presence and how a leader uh, can become more effective. I think that's a very good one, but there are so many. Um, I think that would be a good starter.
Understood. And I've read that, highly impressed by that book. So I would also highly recommend it. I think I covered it. So from my side, I'll also share two books. One is Presence by Amy Cuddy. I
Hmm.
think it might not be exactly where what we talked about, but it's a great book written in a very simple language, I would say, for a lot of people to understand about presence and even apply it. Second book related to communication. Again, it's not exactly a communication book, but I would recommend reading To Sell is Human by Daniel Pink. That book is around the topic of moving others and how everyone should be adopting the new tactics, new ways of selling, the new ABCs of selling. The new ABCs of selling are attunement, buoyancy, and clarity. So I
It's
would recommend that book.
it's actually an interesting book. Yes,
Yeah.
I wouldn't immediately put it into the communication and interaction, but it has certainly. I mean, let's face it. Selling is influencing, and influencing is communicating and
Yes.
interacting. So, from that
Yes. Yes.
perspective, I fully agree.
Yeah. All right. On that note, thank you so much, Manfred, for another very interesting conversation. We talked about two of the keys of leadership. Hopefully, in our upcoming sessions, we will look over the others as well.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.